Detroit at San Francisco. What a mind-numbing performance from the Lions. Not their players, from their coaching staff. How mind-numbing. That like, I keep saying it, but like the more and more I think about this game, how else can you describe the decisions made by Dan Campbell other than mind-numbing?
Yeah, so I don't know if you could see, bro. I'm having like a little eye twitch here, and I think it's because how much that I just literally, this game is making me anxious over again. Like, I can't even process what had happened. Like, jokes aside, bro, let's be serious for a sec. I think what really is so painful about this one, and this, so let me just give some personal anecdote first. I don't know how you feel about this. Mm-hmm. This was the most painful game to watch for me since the Saints got hosed out of the NFC chip. But the difference was with that one, again, like I was saying to you when we were walking in, the difference with that is, like, that's just something you really can't control. You know, It's like, cosmic, wasn't meant to happen, and that makes it a little bit more redeeming mentally. But with this one, it was like, oh, man, like, oh, they pissed it away, and you knew the moment they pissed it away, too. It's where it gets so much worse. I think what I wanted to lead with is, look, if there's anything that this game emphasized for the course of history for every coach ever to be able to go back and look at, even if this was a regular season game and you're on the road and you have all the momentum against a much better team, the last thing you should be ever doing is playing with it. And they had all the momentum. I mean, literally, if this was like the Madden scoreboard where the momentum is shifting, it was literally all the way on the fucking Lions side. And then you have a chance to go up 3 possessions midway through the third quarter. Simple logic to me. And again, like we said, you don't trust. It comes down to, look, the reality is, too, like, obviously they did trust Michael Badgley. They don't trust their kicker with those deep intermediate kicks. Because for whatever reason, he's the worst deep intermediate kicker in the entire league. Very weird with his percentages. But again, sometimes in life, there are definitely just times you got to trust the man to do his job. And I always believe, too, sometimes it's like, you know what? Some guys are meant for it. It's like when the pressure's on, they actually elevate. And you had to give Badgley a shot and see if that's the type of guy he is. Like, you know what, Badgley, the pressure's on. I need you. It's time to elevate. Instead, they literally squandered all the momentum, and you felt it right when it happened. Because here's what makes it worse, too, and you knew it, is that it wasn't just that they didn't convert the 4th down. It was that it was an easy conversion, and it was dropped. And so everybody starts going, oh, my God. And on your sideline and the fan base, they go, is it not our time? There's this thing that takes mentally where it's like, it wasn't just like it got tipped or the play didn't get executed well. It was like, no, everything was drawn up perfectly, and it just didn't execute. That's where it gets really, like.
So I see it like there's been like a lot of discourse on whether he made the right decision, like not kicking the field goals. Like, I understand that like maybe your kicker isn't the greatest from like 40 plus, but here's where it doesn't make sense to me. You can argue that, you know, it was the right decision to go for it on 4th and 3, the right decision to go for it on 4th and 2 instead of taking the points, right? Like, regardless, if you look at the game, they lost by 3, they left potentially 6 points on the field. But where I have the issue with people making that discussion, saying that the 4th down was the right decision to go for it and not kick the field goal, is you are up by 2 scores going into half, okay? You are on the 49ers 3-yard line. There's no chance. The 49ers get the ball regardless. There is 0 chance that the 49ers drive at the end of the half because there's 7 seconds left. Why in the decision when you are on the goal line do you line up for a field goal? I feel like that's like, if you make that, it's 28-7 going into half. That's 3 touchdowns. And I understand it's 3 scores regardless if you kick the field goal. But my thing is, if you're going to kick the field goal there and take the points, why are you not taking the points when you have the opportunity to keep continually adding points to your lead? Like, this is a team who has been here before. This is a team who is better on paper than you. And yet you decide, and I understand you've been rolling the dice all year, but my thing is, you're not at the Super Bowl yet. These are Super Bowl decisions. You're in the NFC Championship.
Even then, like, bro, and I agree with what you're saying. I think, though, it's like, hear me out. I think it doesn't matter whether it was a fucking preseason week 1 or the Super Bowl. Those decisions have got to come with a very, very, like, rigid sense of where the momentum is at. And it's like, when you look, we were like everyone saw it. You could see how visibly shaken and out of the game the Niners were. Even Shanahan, every time the camera panned to their fucking leader, he was shaking his head, looking around like, what am I going to do? And, oh, what is he going to do? Well, what you do is you just pray the other coach decides to start pissing away possessions. Because that's the thing, like, I always look at it. It's simple to me, bro. It always has been. It really is. Like, at the end of the day, playoff games are a possession game. The team that gets more possessions and dominates the possessions is going to win the game. And it's like, when you... there's really no words for it. Like, and because that's my thing is, I want to be clear. Like, it's not all on Dan Campbell at all. Like, I'm not trying to sit here trying to say, like, if Josh Reynolds didn't have butter on his fingers, we'd be looking back saying that Dan Campbell is the ballsiest, best decision maker in the league.
Jamison Williams also dropped the touchdown on that flea flicker.
No, and that's the thing. Nobody even talked about it because it was such a bad drop that it didn't even look like a drop. It was more like he couldn't even locate the ball midair, which is really tough when you were a first-round pick as early as Jamison was. We're not even going to get on that right now because that's a whole different can of worms, I feel like, more for the offseason when we start talking about the future of the Lions. As of right now, immediately, though, I think that you can say, minus Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta, obviously the core officially is leaves a lot to be desired still. They have a lot of O-line guys they got to pay. And again, if that's why everyone would say, and the Lions fans would agree so much, like that's what hurt so much about them blowing this one, is that whether they were going to go win or lose in 2 weeks, this was their shot to have some hardware. For everyone to see the Lions lift some hardware and say, like, wow, like they really, really accomplished something.
Yeah. And
again, you can be a moral victory guy all you want. Everybody in that locker room is standing here right now. They would say that there wasn't really much accomplished this season because the reality of the situation is you want to go all the way as a profession. And again, I'm not here for the moral victories. And I think that's what makes it hurt even more. If you're someone who wants to sit here and, just harp on what, yay, like Whippy, it was a good season. That shit doesn't, I'm sorry, that doesn't mean anything. As someone who's seen their team go all the way and someone who's seen the team fail miserably multiple times. The ones that failed multiple times, it doesn't really matter how great the season was, right? It does. I don't really ever reflect on how those great moments. It's the one, you go back to the one where they finally got the job done. And yes, that's why this really hurts Lions fans, and I'm here for you. I understand how much this hurts. But then the reality of the situation is that's why you can't be pissing away possessions. And I think I was going to lead with another point here. It's a very, very, like, far off side note. But, like, maybe this game is the game where it kind of, again, emphasizes going forward. If you're a team that's really competing, and you know what you're competing for, you're trying to have Lombardi hopes, and there are kickers across the league, we see it all the time. Like, there will be good kickers on, like, a very bad team. A kicker who's very consistent on a team that's not doing anything. If you're a team that knows you're going to be competing for Lombardi, you don't have faith in your kicker,
trade.
Why not trade, like, a 6th, 7th round pick for them and have faith in that position? It's special teams, offense, defense, all 3 phases. If you're the Lions and you're going into the game with 2 phases,
well, also you got to think,
it's pretty hard to win the Super Bowl.
Most of these games come down to 3 points anyway. Like, have the guy you trust to make that 50-yarder. I don't know. Like, if you look at kind of like I agree with that. That's actually something that I think we've seen more often, even in this offseason, is like people trading their kickers. Like you saw, like the Saints did it with Lutz, and Peyton went and got his guy, regardless if the Broncos made the playoffs or not. Like, you trust Will Lutz to go make a field goal.
And we saw how much, and Will Lutz redeemed himself a lot. He had one kind of off season,
right?
Completely, and he was injured. Completely redeemed himself. It's worth the trade.
But I mean, you saw Moody missed the field goal at the start. Like,
that's when that's when it was really shifting for where you were feeling like the Niners. You're like,
oh yeah. I mean, I was surprised he nailed the other kicks, but so just for the Lions have a lot of free agents, so do the Ravens, but we'll get to that. Just on the O-line, Jonah Jackson, Graham Glasnow, Dan Skipper, do you know how to say it? Vaitai?
I'm not gonna lie.
I'm not even gonna try that.
I've heard it before. I don't want to butcher it.
Vaitai and Matt Nelson. Now, obviously, not all these guys are starters, but like that's a good chunk of your O-line. And another thing for the Lions that is going to be a problem is you are probably going to have to extend Jared Goff. And with the way he's played, and the craziest part about this game is like Jared Goff played at a very high level. Like
it's one of those games where the stats don't show it, but he did.
Like Jared Goff, like I don't think could have played a better game. Like that is like you squeezed every little bit out of Jared Goff that game.
You're just adding to the list of things that makes it hurt so much. Oh, and last thing before I start giving the Niners their credit, because I want to transition to the Niners, give them their credit, and I want to talk about the Niners. But last thing on the Lions is another thing that really just it's the final nail in the coffin of the pain. It's like they were literally having their way. Like, their O-line was dominating the Niners' D-line, which was something I don't think many people saw coming. I think you would say you saw it coming to be a fair fight, where it'd be very 50-50. I didn't see it where the Lions were just going to come absolutely displace line of scrimmage every play. That's what was happening, and for whatever reason, Ben Johnson decided to just kick the can on that in the second half. Very, very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, my thing also is, like, what was very surprising to me is, like, the Lions actually did a pretty good job, like, shutting down Christian McCaffrey. Like, he had
especially the first half.
Yeah, like, he had a couple explosive plays, but, like, okay. I think it is so fair to say that Dan Campbell lost them this game. Like, don't get me wrong, like, the Lions definitely started to crumble in the second half with some bad drops, like some really bad drops. But, like, is this not the best game we've ever seen Jameson Williams play? Like, is this not, like, the most amped up we've seen the defense play? Like, it's just, like, everybody came to play, and, like, crucial decisions made by your coach cost them the game.
That's why I was saying with the thing where it's like sometimes I get being aggressive, but that's why sometimes making the right decision, and if it doesn't go right, at least you made the right decision. Because that's what I'm saying. Like, in Dan Campbell's mind, obviously, taking the 3 and taking the 2 field goals wasn't the right decision, right? Because we've gotten to a phase 2 where analytics is kind of has taken over in a crazy way. And I'm for analytics most of the time, but like everybody says, that at least is logical about it. I'm only for analytics when you're considering momentum. Like, if we're just looking at it blindly, it doesn't make any sense. Momentum has got to start being something considered, and I think it is by plenty of great coaches. And again, I want to be clear, I don't even know if Dan Campbell is making those decisions off analytics. That could just be Dan Campbell balls to the wall, which we know he is. But regardless, that's why sometimes you have to be willing to let guys do their job. Yeah. And you gotta be willing to let your kicker do their job.
Before we go into the Niners, like, this is something that is, like, super important in my opinion, is like I said, you gotta re-sign a lot of that O-line. You gotta fill some pieces in there. You gotta pay Jared Goff. Ben Johnson might be gone. Like,
I think we're looking at probably about a 95% chance.
95% chance he's the Commanders' head coach next year. And in my opinion, Ben Johnson came in and fixed Goff, right? Like, he solved issues that McVay wasn't solving. If you bring in a new OC and you give Goff a mega extension and he is not able to work with Goff the same way that Ben Johnson did, which I doubt is possible, the Lions are in a real tough spot. And like Dan Campbell said, which we talked about, which we think is idiotic, that this was their best shot. Like, whether that's true or not, like, you don't say that to a locker room who you just blew the game for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The last thing, because we have to get into that. Niners, I promise we're getting to you. We're gonna
this
give
is just so crazy.
Niners, we're gonna give you your credit. I promise. You guys played a fantastic game and an amazing, legendary comeback. We're gonna get to that. Yeah. Last thing, Dan Campbell with that. It was kind of the equivalent to when Lamar said out loud he doesn't like competing against Mahomes. This, to me, was the same thing where it's like, number one, you don't speak it out into existence. I think, like, some things are just better left in the mental. Like, it's literally speaking doubt out into existence. And you're either someone who believes in that type of thing or you don't. Me, personally, I'm a big believer in that words mean a lot. Words have impact on your life. That's why you speak good even when you're not feeling good. You bring positive energy into your life.
Right.
And, again, whether you believe in that or not, I think there's an impact of how it affects people mentally no matter what. When you have a group of 53 men in a room, yes, that does affect the way that they are going to view next season. And to be putting doubt into the heads of guys who already are going to have a lot of doubts, it's just, I think if anything too, it kind of shows. I think Dan Campbell does obviously have a little bit of trouble, like maybe processing these type of moments. Like, he's such an amped up, like, he's such a fiery guy that it's like the dichotomy of it. That it's like when something like this happens and there's a letdown like this, it's almost like someone like him mentally struggles to process it. And I think even kind of little side note, maybe I might be sideways on this one. Maybe I'm a little bit wrong. But that's why part of the reason I say it. Maybe he was just trying to get to different guys first, all that. But I don't know if you peeped or anybody even peeped, but when the game was over and, Shanahan was going right to midfield right away to go shake his hand. Oh, the ads are hitting us with the cheese.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
He went to, like, go, he's, like, Shanny's just waiting in the middle of the field, and he's kind of, like, looking around, like, where is Dan Campbell? And it took DC, like, 45, 50, like, it took him, like, a long time to get over there, and he was kind of, like walking to, like, walk inside, like, saying, like, hi to some other players first. And I'm like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of your job to like get out there right away and go, like shake Shanny's hand, no matter how much that shit just hurt. Like it's kind of like it was almost like he really was struggling to process it. Like damn, like we really just lost and I gotta go, like shake up the other coach. It's like I you know what I mean? I think part of him, it's like he does struggle with because he's such a fiery guy. Like stuff like this is hard to process.
I don't want to relate them, and then after this point, let's just get to the Niners because we could talk about the decisions of the Lions all day. Here's my thing. I think the way Dan Campbell conducts himself is great until they're not successful. Like we saw that with Sirianni. Like everyone thought Sirianni was, oh, I love the way how he's fiery and talks shit. And I don't think a lot of people were calling for his job after this year.
And I want to relate this to something else now, but then we'll move on to the Niners. I think that's also why you can look and if you pointed fingers and you said, oh, let's look at the two most successful coaches of our era. Let's look at Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. What do they have in common? They literally don't talk about stuff that's not football related. Like they're like, you know what? Not even just not football related. That's not directly related to everything that goes on only with the team. They're like, oh, what did you think about X and X where there was drama? I don't care. Like I don't care. I don't think about that shit. What we do here is we think about the football, and that's all we think about, and I'm not going to sit here and get more to think emotions involved. Like, I don't have an emotional response to what that ref did. I don't have an emotional response to what my player did. I don't have an emotional response to what the fan base did. Like, you keep emotion out of it. It's a job, and it sounds crazy, but to an extent, I do believe that's back to the energy thing. You keep an even keel energy. You kind of you let BS kind of it doesn't BS comes and it goes. But when you're someone who's very emotional, good when the good's happening, it's really good. But then when the bad's happening, like you're saying, everybody starts to really absorb it because there's too much emotion going on.
All right, let's get to the Niners. We spent probably about 20 minutes on the Lions.
We had to, bro.
Yeah, it was just brutal. So what do you want to talk about first with them? Because obviously this is a really big comeback for them, being down, 24-7 at half, and then holding the Lions scoreless in the third, putting up 17, and then putting up another 10 in the fourth. Congrats on the Super Bowl, but you were also kind of gifted it. I don't want to take it away from it.
I think Niners fans would be fully willing to agree that
they
like
were
yes.
gifted to this. I'm not saying you were gifted the season and being here in this game, but there was crucial mistakes made by the Lions that allowed you guys to come back. The Lions really killed their own momentum. But I will say, the Niners came out way more juiced up in the second half. I think there was a point where the Lions got a little bit complacent with their lead, and once they got shut down, they're like, oh no, we're the Lions. But, okay, so I will say this. I think Purdy, here's my thing. It's been well documented. I am not a Purdy guy. I don't have an issue with Purdy himself. I have issues with the Purdy hype beast who are like, oh, he's top 15. Like this, Purdy stepped up when it mattered. I will say that. But we can't ignore that, like, he put multiple balls in harm's way that were dropped by the defense, and he's done that almost every single game in these playoffs. Like, the issue with the Niners is, like, they almost lost to the Packers. They almost lost to the Lions. Like, if you are so good of a team, you can't be in that territory where you're close to losing to these teams who are not even close to your roster talent-wise. Here's what I will say, and I will probably get destroyed for this, but I'm going to be very true. I put it in our chat last night, and nobody wanted to respond to it. Brock Purdy is more of a dual-threat quarterback than Justin Fields.
Because I didn't even see you say that. No,
Brock Purdy can win from the pocket, but Brock Purdy's legs won that game last night. He's the reason that they won. A dual-threat quarterback wins from the pocket and then also wins with his legs. If you can't win from the pocket and you just run, you are not a dual-threat quarterback. Brock Purdy showed what it meant to be a dual-threat quarterback last night. He made the throws from the pocket. He stood in there, took the hits, made the throws. Props to Brock Purdy. I know I was shitting on him a little bit, but, like, I can't be – I'm trying to be objective here. Like, he showed up. Like, when his legs were there, he showed up.
Let's say, here's my thing, bro, to go off that, and you would agree. The most important trait, far and away, and it's the thing is, it's so hard to scout this. That's what makes it so hard to find the ones that can really get the job done when it's crunch time. But the number one trait to have as a quarterback is that no matter how the scoreboard looks, you take it one play at a time, right? Like, that's back to the mental thing. Like, it's not about like, there really is no outlook of, like, the result of the game. Like, you don't go into the game, like, I'm worried about the result. You're literally such a professional that it's like I'm only worried about the next play. Brock Purdy proved that that's the type of quarterback he is. Those are the type of quarterbacks that win Super Bowls.
Right.
That's why the 49ers are finding themselves in the Super Bowl. Because the reality situation is you don't need, again, we've seen, you don't have to have the greatest skill set in the world. What you do need to have is composure and the ability I'm repeating myself over and over, but I'm going to emphasize it, just to take things literally one play at a time. Because the only thing you can control is the next play. Every great quarterback knows that. And here's the thing. This is really what I'm going to say. Brock Purdy, in a sense, did elevate himself into the greatness territory because of that last night. I agree with everything that you said. And his thing is, he definitely is still he is a flawed quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I think in the same sense, I'm going to try to give even almost how about like a comparison point of like the type of arc of career he could have, couldn't have. But how about I'll compare him to a type of quarterback right now? It's kind of like how when Joe Flacco, when they made the run. Like Joe Flacco wasn't perfect.
That's fair.
Joe Flacco had plenty of flaws, but he had X factors to the game that made it so that, you know what, when you have a great roster around him, you can go all the way. And that's exactly what Brock Purdy is too. And when we look back on Joe Flacco, we never don't say, oh, that was not a legendary run. Joe Flacco's not a legend. Like, the reality situation is Brock Purdy's one win away from being a 49ers legend. And on top of that, I think this next game, and Niners fans would agree, win or lose is going to determine so much, I think, the future of the Niners for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big momentum legacy game, and there's just no two ways around it.
I think the thing is, like, if you go into this game and you lose to Mahomes, I think the narrative that building around, like, a non-elite quarterback and just building, like, the best roster you can gets shot dead in its tracks. Because it's like, you can make it to that. You can make it to the Super Bowl. But if you can't beat the best quarterback in the game, even with a way better roster, what does it matter? I mean, like, we saw the Chiefs lose to the Ravens, who statistically have one of the best defenses, have one of the best offenses, is the best rushing team in the NFL. And, like, the game was close, but it kind of always felt like the Chiefs. And it's like
you meant to say the Ravens lose to the Chiefs. You said Chiefs lose to the.
No, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
I know. I was just thinking. I was like, wait.
No. So you see the Ravens